Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and this time we're talking about Metroid Prime 4. So you might be wondering why everyone is talking about Metroid Prime 4 this week, what's going on? So about 2 years ago, on January 25th, 2019, we got the infamous development update for Prime 4. In that video, Nintendo basically told us that they were going to have to restart the development for Metroid Prime 4 because it just wasn't measuring up to the quality expectation they had for the game. They want Metroid Prime 4 to measure up to the quality of the initial Metroid Prime, which is one of the greatest games of all time. So Nintendo is trying to make Metroid Prime 4 an incredible game, and that's very exciting. But because of this tremendous effort and because of how careful Nintendo's being about this, we know next to nothing about Metroid Prime 4. But now that we're now 2 years removed from that initial development restart, we're getting close to maybe when we could actually start seeing some real information from Nintendo about Metroid Prime 4. Metroid's 35th anniversary is coming up this year, in August. Potentially, we may be seeing some sort of teaser for Prime 4 at some point in 2021. Fingers crossed. So with that all in mind, I figured it would be a good idea to examine the information we do know about Metroid Prime 4 and put it all together to come up with a pretty nice theory as to what we should maybe expect for the story and who the main villain will be for Metroid Prime 4. That's what we're talking about today. Now before we jump into things, let me quickly talk about my social media. There's a Twitter page, a Discord community, a Patron page, and a Twitch channel. If you are interested in any of that, check it all out, it's linked in the description below, and of course, if you like what you're seeing here, subscribe. Excluding the fact that Retro Studios is continually hiring more and more talent to make Metroid Prime 4, what else do we know about this game? Well, before we even got the announcement of Metroid Prime 4 back in 2017, there were a couple different teasers that came out from different Metroid Prime games that are sort of suggesting some things for the story of Metroid Prime 4 that have been somewhat validated by Prime producer Kensuke Tanabe. So the first sort of teaser we got was after Metroid Prime 3, the very end of the initial Metroid Prime trilogy. At the end of that game, we saw this weird ship following Samus. And then at the end of Metroid Prime Federation Force, there was this other weird cutscene where this strange character was hacking into the Federation and stealing and hatching a Metroid egg. Who was in this ship following Samus at the end of Metroid Prime 3? Who is this character breaking into the Galactic Federation and stealing a Metroid? Well, we actually do know who that is because Prime Producer has confirmed who that person is, and that person, that character, is Sylix. Now, Sylix is one of the hunters from Metroid Prime Hunters, that multiplayer Metroid Prime game that came out on the Nintendo DS. Now, from that game, we don't know that much about who Sylix is, but we do know that he has some resentment towards the Federation and by association also for Samus as well. Going beyond that, his identity is pretty much unknown. We don't even know what species he is, unlike the other hunters. There's a certain level of mystery behind Sylix, and clearly there are some plans for him because he was following Samus at the end of Metroid Prime 3, and he was stealing an egg at the end of Federation Force. It seems something's going on here. But to further validate this idea, let me read you what Prime producer Kensuke Tanabe said on Sylix back in 2015 in an interview with IGN. Now this part's in relation to Sylix in his ship at the end of Prime 3. He's actually chasing after Samus, and that's where the game ends. There's still more I want to build around the story of Sylix and Samus. There's something going on between them. I want to make a game that touches upon it. So what's interesting about this part is that this is back in 2015. Keep in mind that 2 years later, we would get the announcement for Metroid Prime 4. But continuing on, I'm also thinking that in that eventual game between Sylix and Samus that might get made, that I would want to involve the Galactic Federation as well. So it would be a good idea to release a game like Federation Force to flesh out its role in the galaxy before moving on to that. And what's also important to keep in mind with this is before Federation Force had even come out. So this is alluding to another tease for Sylix at the end of Federation Force with him stealing the Metroid egg. So then, we know that Sylix has some sort of resentment for Samus for some reason going beyond the Federation. And he's also following Samus at the end of Prime 3. And on top of that, at the end of Federation Force, he is stealing a Metroid egg. I would say it's pretty clear that Silex is going to be playing a vital role to Metroid Prime 4. That's what all the teases have been for. So then, what exactly is going to be going on here? Well, what I'm theorizing is that Silex will be stealing that Metroid egg, as we saw at the end of Federation Force, but that Metroid is going to be important. That Metroid is going to become the next Metroid Prime. Now, if you don't understand the full story behind Metroid Prime, basically, in Metroid Prime, the original, there was a lot of experimentation with phazon and radiation and different things on Talon 4. The Space Pirates basically genetically engineered a Metroid to become a Metroid Prime, which is basically the most powerful Metroid we've seen in the entire Metroid universe, even stronger than a Metroid Queen. And that essentially is the main villain for the entire Metroid Prime series. However, at the end of Metroid Prime, this creature starts to demonstrate a great level of intelligence, and as it's about to die entirely, it actually pulls off the phazon suit from Samus. And this ultimately amounts to the creation of Dark Samus, which is really just Metroid Prime at its core. At the end of Metroid Prime 3, we finally beat Dark Samus entirely. She, or it, is killed. And that's the end of Metroid Prime. But if you're gonna continue the Metroid Prime series, maybe there should be some sort of story behind it that connects it. I believe this next Metroid that Silex stole will become the next Metroid Prime. I think it makes sense to think that Silex stole this egg and is working with the Space Pirates here. They will genetically engineer this Metroid and create a new Metroid Prime. For whatever reason, that's hard to say, but perhaps they are trying to come up with some way to sort of further dominate the universe, and they need a powerful creature like a new Metroid Prime, perhaps an even stronger Metroid Prime, to do that. But on top of that, we will also have Silex, who could be somewhat of a rival for Samus. There are two motifs in the Metroid Prime games: giant epic boss monsters like Metroid Prime, but also these humanoid rivals we've seen, mostly with Dark Samus. This new Metroid Prime could be the final goal, that final giant monster that you have to defeat, but Silex could also be taking on the role of that humanoid rival that you also have to fight throughout the game as well. So then Metroid Prime 4 would be satisfying both motifs here, and I think there's actually a lot of potential there, because there's already this hidden story or background behind Samus and Silex. We'll be learning about that throughout Metroid Prime 4, potentially beyond, and then we'll also be seeing this new Metroid Prime, which could become an even greater threat than the initial Metroid Prime, which I think is very exciting. And that's pretty much the theory here. Silex is following Samus for some reason, but he also steals a Metroid egg, and I think this Metroid egg is going to become the next Metroid Prime, and throughout Metroid Prime 4, as this Metroid is being genetically engineered and enhanced, Samus is assigned by the Federation to defeat it, which sort of further strains the relationship between Samus and Silex, because Silex hates the Federation, and you start to learn more about that throughout the game as you duel Silex. But there's one more element I've failed to bring into this equation here, and that's Ridley. Ridley is the main antagonist throughout the entire Metroid series, so you can be sure that we will see Ridley to some extent in Metroid Prime 4 as well. Ridley is the leader of the Space Pirates, and I am assuming that the reason Silex went ahead and stole that Metroid from the Federation is because, well, it was a job from the Space Pirates. Silex is working in conjunction with the Space Pirates here. So the real villain, I believe, is the Space Pirates and Ridley, who are hiring Silex to retrieve this Metroid, and then they will genetically enhance the Metroid, and that will become the Metroid Prime, which will be the main villain. And Silex may have a very strong antagonistic role, but Silex himself may not be the villain. There may be more to his backstory here that may make him more of an anti-hero potentially. That's what I'm thinking. But we'll have to wait and see what actually happens with the story. Considering the other Metroid Prime games, I feel like that sounds about right for what we should expect for the story for Metroid Prime 4. And obviously there's a lot more to tell beyond that, but that's just what we can sort of put together from the information we have. What do you guys think? Do you guys think the story will be something along these lines for Metroid Prime 4? or do you think it'll be different? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.